Two cheers. India better score in the latest SDG index, but methodological tinkering is cause for concern. India's push in the right direction in achieving sustainable development goals related to clean energy, urban development, and health has helped it improve its overall SDG score from 60 in 2019 to 66 in 2021, according to Niti Aayog's SDG Index, India Index 2020-21. Besides SDGs on eradication of poverty and hunger, measures related to the availability of affordable clean energy in particular showed improvements across several states and union territories. The campaign to improve the access of householdings to electricity and clean cooking fuel has been shown to be an important factor. While this is cause for cheer, the index reveals that there has been a major decline in the areas of industry, innovation, and infrastructure besides decent work and economic growth, again made worse by the lockdowns imposed by the governments seeking to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. But the stark differences between the southern and western states on the one hand and the north, central, and eastern states on the other in their performance on the SDGs point to persisting socio-economic and governance disparities. These, if left unaddressed, will exacerbate federal challenges and outcomes as seen in the public health challenges during the second wave across some of the worst off states. Notwithstanding the improvement in key indicators, the index has curiously made some methodological changes that render comparisons on some SDGs over previous years moot. The SDG on inequality shows an improvement over 2019, but the indicators used to measure the score have been changed. The 2020-21 index drops several economic indicators and gives greater weightage to social equality indicators such as representation of women and people from marginalized communities in legislatures and local governance institutions and crimes against SAST communities. By dropping the well-recognized Gini coefficient measure and the growth rate for household expenditure per capita among 40% of rural and urban populations. Instead, only the percentage of population in the lowest two wealth qualities is used. The SDG score on inequality seems to have missed out on capturing the impact of the pandemic on wealth inequality. This could be a significant miss as a UN assessment of the impact of COVID-19 had said that the South Asian region may see risking inequality. Methodological issues on measuring other SDGs have been flagged before, but the lack of adequate measurement of economic inequality seems to be a glaring miss. Like in the first wave, the second wave, with more fatalities, has had similar outcomes on livelihoods and jobs, while the better score for India in its endeavor to achieve SDGs will bring some cheer. Governments must work on addressing pressing issues such as increased inequality and economic despair. Winds of change. Israel gets new coalition, but it is unlikely to survive along with its ideological contradictions. In Israel's fractious political landscape, Benjamin Netanyahu has been known as the master of survival. In power since 2009, he has seen allies come and go, proteges turning out to be rivals, and elections happening in the shortest intervals. But he hardly missed an opportunity to turn crisis into political gain, which allowed him to become the longest-serving prime minister, overtaking David Ben-Gurion. However, this may be ending. A coalition of 8 parties under the leadership of opposition politician Yair Lapid could oust Mr. Netanyahu from power and form a change government. In this, Mr. Lapid, who leads the centrist Yesedid party, has joined hands with the right-wing Yamina of Naftali Bennett and other parties ranging from pro-settlers to left-wing and Arab parties. According to the coalition agreements, Mr. Bennett, who was part of the far-right Jewish Home before founding Yamina, would be the PM for 2 years, followed by Mr. Lapid. Mr. Lapid says his coalition has the support of 61 members of the Knesset, a razor-thin majority in the 120-member parliament. Messrs. Lapid and Bennett are now pushing for a quick vote in the Knesset, while Mr. Netanyahu is putting pressure on the right-wing MKs of the coalition to vote against the government. Even if the coalition does sail through the Knesset vote, it might, with its conflicting ideological views, remain fractious and feeble, but that doesn't diminish the importance of the political changes that are underway. The country has seen four elections in the last 2 years with no party winning a majority on its own in any. Last year, Mr. Netanyahu formed a short-lived unity government with opposition leader Benny Gantz. Mr. Gantz, leader of the centrist blue and white, is now with Mr. Lapid. It is Mr. Netanyahu's repeated and failed attempts to form a stable right-wing government that have led the anti-Netanyahu parties from across the spectrum to come together. Also, this is the first time in Israel's history that an Arab majority party has signed a government coalition agreement. Till last year, Arab parties were considered untouchables by the mainstream Jewish parties. But now the United Arab List (ROM), which has four MKs, has officially joined the coalition, breaking a political separation wall. If voted out of power, Mr. Netanyahu will have to fight a corruption trial and possible leadership challenges within the coalition, breaking a political separation wall. If voted out of power, Mr. Netanyahu will have to fight a corruption trial and possible leadership challenges within the Liquid without the shield of premiership. When the Gaza fighting broke out on May 10, coupled with riots in Israeli cities, many thought it would help him politically. But the Gaza fighting appears to have weakened his position among his right-wing allies, who alleged that his government surrendered to Hamas by agreeing to the ceasefire. Mr. Netanyahu is now caught between unhappy right-wing allies and a united opposition.